Hello, peers and Professor Watts. I hope everyone is doing wonderful today. Let's get started. So for this presentation, I chose the painting Nameless and Friendless by Emily Mary Osborne. It was made in 1857. It is oil on canvas, 82 by 104 centimeters, made in Tate Britain, London, on page 23 in our textbook. So, why did I choose this piece? First off, I like it. I like the way it looks. I know whenever I was flipping through the book and I saw this image, I liked it a lot, and I researched it then at that point, and I liked it even more. So whenever this project came up, I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'll do this painting. So I like the colors used a lot. The red tones, the orange tones, the warm tones used really feel inviting to me. So I like the feel of this image. The photorealism is pretty cool. Osborne does a wonderful job with correctly depicting just what humans look like, which I know can be very, very difficult, but she did a wonderful job. So, let's get right into the subject matter of this painting. In Osborne's works, she's known for telling a story in her paintings. So, as opposed to just depicting a feeling or a moment in time, she's telling a whole story, which this painting in particular can be related, or has been related, to a book, Mary Brunton's work, Self-Control, that was published in 1810, I believe, but republished in the 50s. So just around the time that this painting was made, and it could definitely have inspired it, that book was about a woman who's trying to sell her paintings to help her father out of some huge financial debt, but she's not having much luck until she gets to the fourth print shop, where a man who was a former artist agrees to sell her print because he was drawn by it, and this is believed to be the man in number 6, if you can see at the top right of the screen, number 6, that is believed to be the person that we are talking about here. There's many elements in this painting that tell us things about the characters that are depicted here. So let's start with number 1. So number 1 shows us what we should have an interest in. Point number 1, you see two men who are, or should be, looking at a print that is held in their hands. It is of a ballerina dancing. She has her arms above her head, her legs are exposed. It's very risque for the 1850s, but instead of looking at that, they are looking at the two figures standing right in front of us, the woman and who we assume to be her brother, her younger brother. It definitely shows you where you should be looking, because everybody's looking over there. Point number 2 here shows what I was speaking about in the previous slide with colors. The warm tones, the reds and the browns and the oranges that are used to color the inside of the shop are in high contrast to the blues and the grays that are used to show the outside world, which, I mean, on the inside of the shop, it's homey, it's warm, it's cozy, and it makes you think like, hey, I want to be in there, right? So this focuses what you should be looking at. You're not distracted by what's going on outside because it doesn't look like a nice day. You should be looking what's going on inside, and that's exactly what that does. Points 3, 4, and 5 here tell us more about the woman and her status. Looking at her shawl, you can see that the colors are a little dim. They're greens and grays, and they're just kind of dull. The dress and head cover that she's wearing all black, which tells us that she is mourning. She's recently experienced a death in her family or her life, and we can also assume from the lack of ring, she's not wearing a wedding ring, we can assume that she was never married, so she is actually orphaned. That is the situation that makes the most sense when you're considering she's wearing no ring, but she's wearing black and she's in mourning. So we can assume that she and her brother are orphaned. Point number 4 is referencing her emotions and her feelings during this interaction that's happening. She is looking at the floor. She's like, don't look at me. She has her shoulder turned away from the man looking at her work in a sort of self-defense kind of motion. She's fiddling with some string in her hands. She's very nervous about the whole exchange. And point number 5, we can tell more about her social standing in this situation, where if she was a member that was of higher social status than the man that is appraising her work or judging her work would have offered her a seat. In the book, this page was used to reference line, specifically psychological line. There are many instances in this painting where psychological line is used. So if you can remember, psychological line is a line between two figures or two objects that isn't a physical line, but it's a line like a line of sight. That is a psychological line. They're not actually using a line here, like she didn't draw a line like I did, but it is the idea that this man in picture 1, he is looking at the two figures standing right in front of us. This is implying a psychological line, this is implying a connection between what's catching his interest. He's looking over at these two, but he's not, there's no actual line there. For the woman figure, she is staring at the ground. There's a psychological line between her eyes and the ground. Where I have point number 6, the connection between the man on the ladder and the painting that the man is appraising. That is a very clear connection, and it also speaks to, if this painting were related to the book that I mentioned, that would make a lot of sense why he was looking at the painting. Otherwise, he could just be like, whoa, look at that painting. And the point below that, the picture below that, where I have the boy staring at the man appraising, assumably his sister's work, there's a clear connection in the psychological line between the boy and the man appraising his sister's work. Alright, so let's talk a little bit more about the artist here, Emily Mary Osborne. So she was born around 1830 in London, England. Her father was a reverend and her mother was a stay-at-home mother. Osborne showed potential to be a great artist at a very young age. She would make portraits of her siblings, and she would also, in her teen years, look around for pigments that she can make paints out of, as she did not have these supplies readily available to her. In her later teenage years, she began taking evening classes at the Dickinson Academy on Maddox Street. At age 17, she began showing off her work in the annual Royal Academy art show. Some milestones in her life. Whenever her mother died, she spent about 2 years not producing any art or any work. And then for 6 months after that, her and her sisters committed themselves to helping the sick in the Franco-Prussian War, which this took her to many places that she would be inspired to make art at. Algeria and Venice, places like that where she would be producing art. Some more facts about her: she was never married and she never had children. She also doesn't have any portraits of her, which is why I took a portrait of a random Victorian woman and put a smiley face on it, because, you gotta make your own way sometimes. She was also one of the most influential female artists in the push for women's rights. So women's suffrage around the mid-19th century, she was very influential in her artworks. As I may not have mentioned in the painting that I'm analyzing, the idea behind that is that it could be showing the plight of what female artists have to go through, as in that time period, they were not held to as high of a regard as their male counterparts. Even if their art was the same quality, even if they had the same amount of schooling, they were just not seen the same way as their male counterparts were. So she was a large proponent in the women's suffrage movement. So here are some more of Osborne's paintings. She did lots of photorealism. She was very interested in that sort of painting style. The one on the very left, For the Last Time, that depicts two women mourning. The painting in the middle, Presentments, that is one of her earlier works. It's slightly different. It's almost in a more cartoony style than her other works, but it kind of shows her progression. I did not put these in chronological order, but if you look, the one in the middle is the oldest, the one on the right is the second oldest, and the one on the very far left is the oldest in this set of photos, and you can kind of see how her style developed into very crisp photorealism in the end, in a more cartoony, realistic style toward the beginning of her painting career. And on the right is one of her more famous works. The Nameless and Friendless that I'm making this analysis on is her most famous work, but The Governess is, I would say, her second most famous work. All of her works do have women centered, if not the center of the painting itself. So that is all I have for this photo and my analysis of it. Here are my resources. I use the Women in Art website that focuses on Emily Mary Osborne herself and how she was influential, as were other women in art around that time. I used Khan Academy, which focused specifically on an analysis of this painting. I used Art UK, which focused on other works from Emily Mary Osborne and what they looked like. That's where I got the other photo. Victorian Web, which is where I found a great photo of Presentments. That was the middle image of her works. And of course the textbook. So thank you all for watching. I hope you found this informative and fun to watch. As I was researching what artists did what works and their thoughts and feelings behind them, I thought that Osborne's attitude and points made in her art were very... what? He's almost... My kitty cat wanted to say hi. Say hi. Right, but there's a clear connection in the psychological line between the boy and the man appraising his sister's work. Mother, there was I believe she was the oldest of 8 children. Mother did mention interest in exploring art or pursuing art as a career or as an interest, but she never actually pursued that as a profession. I just said like the same thing 3 times. You can be in the way.